Okay, for the third demonstration, I'll start showing you a little bit about how to start creating patterns within the walls of your pot, because that's one of the things. You got to have at least 3 patterns somehow sort of woven into the walls. I mean, if this was just ringlets, it wouldn't be quite as interesting of a piece than, say, if you had some sort of patterns like some of the examples I showed you in class. Okay? All right, so also you need to make sure you have 3 different thicknesses, at least 3 different thicknesses in various coils to give you some sort of variety. So I've got a couple of coils rolled out here. So, you know, we could do something that's kind of fairly straightforward, you know, like you could just make like little spirals, like kind of how I made my base. I can make my little spiral, connect that up, and I can start putting spirals all along the wall of my pot to make a pattern. Now there's a certain thing you got to do. Now a couple things you got to remember. So a few things to remember. One, you have to decide whether or not you want your piece to be more functional or to be more formal or more decorative. So if you want something to be functional, then you want to smooth out the insides very well, so that if you have it containing water, for example, if you wanted to make a vase that actually holds water and put flowers in it, or something else that would contain a liquid or a solid really well, then you need to make sure to smooth out the insides. Okay, if you want your piece to be more decorative, you can leave the inside sort of bumpy and spirally, or however, to give it some interesting sort of texture. Okay, we could also leave kind of gaps in the walls as well as we go. But again, if it's functional, we want to make sure that all of the little gaps are filled in. Okay, now if you're doing this pattern all the way around, what you want to make sure you don't do is just take a couple of coils and like kind of attach it, and you'll have a couple that are sticking up and you won't have time to do the rest. You kind of need to make sort of a chain. All right, so I've got one coil here, and I'll make, or one little spiral, and I'll make a couple of others really quickly. Okay, so there's another one. And I've got one more. And all of this is really wet clay, so you don't have to. So I would make quite a few together in a row. Now, when you do that, it depends on what you want. If you want a smooth inside, you can just drag your finger across and attach these. If you want the pattern to show on both sides, then you will need to score and slip these together first. So I think I'm going to have the texture showing, so I'm going to score and slip mine. Okay, and then I'll just take my little bit of my water. Press those together. Kind of clean them up a little bit with my finger. Okay, now if I wanted to keep those sort of round, I could also probably want to do this to the top and the bottom, but I could pat those out and make those more round. So now I can attach the whole thing as I score and slip it together. But again, you want the whole thing done at one time and not just one at a time, because otherwise a lot of times you'll come back and this will be much drier than what you're putting on there and you'll have a hard time attaching it. But you'll notice that this is a little bit well, that's staying pretty well. But of course, if you smooth it on the inside, that's going to connect these really well. And so it's going to become kind of one piece. So you can kind of do either way. But again, I would make the whole length and then put the entire bit on there. Okay, so little spirals are good. You can braid, you can make little braids if you want to do that. You know, you could do something that's something that's just kind of like a curve like this on there. Kind of a simple curve This becomes a little bit dangerous because you've got areas in there that are open, and this can be very fragile. So if you were doing this, you might want to make little chunks of triangles in there that would space that in between. So this would be more stable. Okay, you could do the coil, except this time you could make it, I'm gonna smooth it on the back first. You could make it kind of like a little square coil, so I could sort of tap it down, kind of squarish. Okay, so I could kind of make it like this a little bit more. Okay, or I could make it triangular. You know, however you sort of want to do it. You know, I've seen kids, you know, put little spheres, little balls in there as well. You know, you could even make little knots in the clay. So the clay is pretty cool. You can do all kinds of things. So I can make a nice little pretzel-y knot in here, like that. You know, and then I can take that off, and I could actually put that in the wall of my pot, kind of all the way across. Okay, but again, if you're making things like this, you know, make quite a few and then attach them. And again, I strongly urge you to smooth out on the inside, drag that across so it is a little bit more, it's better of a bond. But, you know, if you're careful, you can retain the inside forms the way they sort of originally were. Okay, so that's one way, a couple ways on how to get started with patterns and how to attach them into the walls of your pot. And also, you know, feel free to go online and look for some other examples. You know, you can even do sort of drawing examples where there are various patterns. You know, you could do like kind of like a zigzaggy kind of pattern. Kind of a thing. And then maybe I could go in here and I could fill in this side. And this side. And just, yeah, I kind of like that side. I'm going to keep that side. And I'm going to drag this one across. And then maybe I'll tap it like that. And so that's a pretty interesting pattern right there. And so I could do that kind of all the way across. And if it gets, you know, a little funky in terms of the form on the outside, you're like, I need to square that up again, you know, just tap it gently on the table. And then boom, you're going to easily be able to put another piece like right on there. So really just play around with it, you know, have fun with it. And again, look online if you need some ideas of some other patterns.